She had once felt like a lost woman, disconnected from the world, wrapped in a layer of weight that had become her shield. Her body had become a hiding place, a silent boundary between herself and a world she didn't know how to trust. She hadn't gained weight by accident. She had gained weight with purpose. It was her invisible no, her way of saying, "Don't come too close," her way of protecting a heart that had never truly felt safe. There was a war inside her between the desire to be desired and the fear of being reduced to just her body. She resisted being seen as a sexual object, yet part of her still longed for attention. She felt the spark of arousal in those moments, and yet shame would always follow. It was confusing, confronting, and at times unbearable. She didn't know how else to experience sex, other than through the lens of being wanted, being used, being seen, but not truly felt. She carried it all, silently, until the moment it all collapsed. One day, the man she loved said it, that her body had changed, that he wasn't as attracted to her anymore, that the sexual desire was fading. And it shattered her, not just because of his words, but because of what they revealed. Because deep down, she had hoped that the world would love her beyond the layers, beyond the shape, beyond the illusion. She had hoped someone could finally love her for her essence, not for how she looked or how she performed. But here it was again, the old wound and ancient echo. You're only lovable if you're slim, only worthy if you're beautiful, only enough if you fit the mold of desire. She cried and raged, and then she paused. Because in that mirror, she saw something else. She saw herself. She saw the thoughts she still carried, the beliefs she hadn't yet dissolved, the self-talk that whispered day after day, "If I look different, I'd be more lovable. If I just lost the weight, I'd be safe again. If I was more desirable, I'd be enough." And how could she blame him when he was simply reflecting the frequency she still hadn't dared to fully let go? How could she expect unconditional love from someone else when she hadn't yet learned it to give it to herself? She began to see that he too was a soul in a body, struggling to love himself, to navigate his own conditioning, to feel safe in his own skin. He wasn't her enemy. He wasn't even wrong. He was human, just like her. And in that moment of pain, something inside her cracked open. She stood naked in front of the mirror, not to judge, but to see, to really see. She touched her arms, her belly, the softness of her thighs, not with shame this time, but with presence. This body had carried her through it all. This body had been the vault of her emotions, the protector of her innocence, the vessel of her silence. And now it was time for a new story. She realized she didn't have to fight herself anymore. She didn't have to shrink. She didn't have to disappear. And she didn't have to prove her worth through control, starvation, or performance. She remembered. Love was never something she had to earn. It was what she already was. But she had forgotten. She had forgotten that her body was never the problem, that the weight was not the enemy, and that the fat was not a flaw. It was information. It was wisdom. It was the body speaking in layers, in silence, in protection. Because how else could the feminine speak when she hadn't been heard for so long? She wept, not from pain, but from remembrance. She was not broken. She was not disgusting. She was not too much. She was not too soft. She was sacred. And in that sacredness, she could finally meet herself again, not as a project to fix, but as a miracle to love. She began to live differently after that. Not immediately, not perfectly, but more honestly. She ate to nourish, not to punish. She moved to connect, not to control. She dressed to express, not to hide. She let life move through her. She let love land. She let pleasure return. And she stopped asking the world for permission to exist. When she looked at him again, the man who had spoken those painful words, she didn't feel hatred, she felt gratitude. Because he had given her the push she needed. He had triggered the collapse of her illusions. He didn't diminish his love for her. If anything, he deepened it. Because truth is the beginning of real intimacy. And she honored him for his honesty. She saw it now with clear eyes. She had been hiding beneath layers of protection, hoping someone would finally see her, while she was still unwilling to see herself. But now, she was awake. She's enough. Because she is. Not because of her weight, not because of her appearance, and not because of any external measure. She is enough because she exists, because she breathes, because she loves. She no longer needed to prove her worth to life, because she is life. She is not separate from it. She is the pulse, the breath, the feminine flow. She is love. She's wholeness. She's remembering. And this is her return.